So recently, we had the Democracy Spring protests in Washington, and apparently they had an effect. So Huffington Post explains here, the recent Democracy Spring protests, in which 1,400 activists were arrested this month, have prompted nearly 100 members of Congress to call for hearings on voting rights and campaign finance reform legislation. Representative John Sarbanes, a leading proponent of campaign finance reform in Congress, organized fellow Democratic lawmakers to send a letter to the Committee on House Administration and to the House Judiciary Committee, asking them to hold hearings on 5 pieces of legislation: the Voter Empowerment Act, Government by the People Act, Democracy for All Amendment, Automatic Voter Registration Act, and Voting Rights Advancement Act. The measures are intended to create a public financing system for congressional elections, overturn Citizens United versus FEC and other campaign finance-related court decisions, and expand voting rights. Okay, so it's great to see that there's some kind of response, some kind of reaction in Washington after these massive protests, this gigantic act of civil disobedience. They broke a record. I think it was the first or second day that they were in Washington, they broke a record of number of activists arrested in a single day. Now, when you compare that with the amount of media coverage they got, oh my God, what a discrepancy. If there's a Tea Party protest, if there's some sort of white nationalist neo-Confederate protest, they got cameras all over the fucking place. If there's a gigantic protest to get money out of politics and reclaim our democracy and move away from being an oligarchy, fucking crickets. In fact, I think when you look at The Intercept had a great article about this, like a few days into the protest. They said that up to that point, there were some networks that only covered it for 30 seconds. I think the longest anybody did was Fox News, and it was 2 minutes. And in that 2 minutes, they described it as a protest over some voting issues, voting rights issues, something like that. So they didn't even put it into context. They didn't even tell you exactly what it was about, and it was just 2 minutes of coverage. So the mainstream media is not covering this stuff at all, which means that the old song, oh, the revolution will not be televised, that's totally true. But the good news is we have new media now. We have the internet. We have various print outlets who are doing a good job in covering it. And now we have this, where somebody was listening. Now, I would imagine that it's, the usual good guys, if you will. So the Progressive Caucus decided, oh, yeah, let's take action on this. But either way, it is a step in the right direction. Now, I should also add here, though, that the specific things they want to do, some of them are fantastic, and some of them would be totally ineffectual even if passed. Because the way our system of government works, of course, is the Supreme Court, they get to determine what is and isn't constitutional. If they determine that something is constitutional, it doesn't matter what law you pass that might disagree with the court. They've already determined it's constitutional to have X, which means that overrides, that supersedes whatever measly law you pass. A law is lower in the hierarchy than a Supreme Court decision. So they could say in a law, okay, Citizens United, no. Or let's roll back all the cases that decided money is free speech. They could say that in a law, but in terms of what the country would actually do, we wouldn't change anything because, again, the Supreme Court gets to determine the supreme law of the land by interpreting the Constitution. So the law is almost null and void and irrelevant even when passed. But even having said that, I'm still in favor of fighting for all these pieces of legislation because I prefer an all-of-the-above approach. So even if it is going to be ineffectual, even if it's just a symbolic thing, good, let's move in the right direction symbolically because it's still moving in the right direction. But I think the most important point is, outside of the things that you can do, which are, like the Same-Day Registration Act and stuff like that, the real answer is a constitutional amendment. And at this point, it might be our only answer that actually can totally work. Again, the other ways I'm in favor of it, even if at the state level you want to try to do campaign finance reform and try to get the money out of the system, great, go for it. But I'm just letting you know, don't be upset when, even if you pass it, the end results are that we still have a corrupt system. So to really, really fundamentally change the system, you have to do a constitutional amendment because constitutional amendment can make it crystal clear that it doesn't matter if the Supreme Court tries to override this at this point. We're going to make it very literal in the sense that now we have clean elections. Now we ban private money and private donations in our system. Now we make it so that the voters can only be beholden to the American people, to the public, because the public are going to be the only ones that pay them. So we can have a battle of competing philosophies as opposed to a battle of competing donors, where the Republicans say, I raise more money from big oil. I raise more money from Wall Street. Oh, the Democrats, you raise some money from Wall Street. You also raise money from lawyers and teachers unions. So now we're just going to battle it out and see who wins, and then we see which donors get the most favors. That's the way the system works right now. We want to change that completely. So yes, do it this way, but just know it's not the most effective way to do it. The real effective way to do it is to get that amendment. And you don't even need to go through Congress to get the amendment. You know, you can go around, you can go through the states and get a constitutional convention. So let's fucking try for that. That's exactly what Wolfpack is focusing on right now. So, you know, let's make it so that corporations aren't people anymore. Let's make it so that we get the money out of the system. Let's make it so that we have clean elections by law. And guys, this is not a partisan issue. You know, depending on which poll you look at, anywhere from 80% to over 90% of the American people say, yeah, we have too much corruption and there's too much money in the system. Great, it's one thing we all agree on. And that's another reason why you don't have to worry about a runaway convention. That's often the counter-argument that people bring up when they try to argue against the constitutional convention to get money out of the system. They're like, but what? There might be a runaway convention, and next thing you know, we all have a right to, I don't know, a nuclear weapon because somebody decides to put that in the Constitution now. Yeah, except you need everybody to fucking agree on it in order to get it done. And the one thing we all agree on is, yeah, no money in the system. Anything else is not going to get done because we don't all agree on it. Left and right agree on the money issue. So let's do it. You know, let's fight harder here. And the Democracy Spring people, they're fucking heroes. You know, they're pushing us in the right direction. And now we're starting to see the snowball effect. A few states fell already and said, yeah, let's do a constitutional convention to get the money out. More states look like they're about to fall. And now we have this national movement where we're doing protests and a record number of people are arrested. And we're starting to see the system budge. And that's great.